Grand rising, you beautiful people. Let's get this party started right. Wait, what happened? Did something just stop? Did something just stop? I'm not late. What happened? Why did this suddenly just stop? Could you hear it, or is it just me? Anyway, good morning to you, Grand Rising. Tell me I'm not going to have problems. Tech problems. No. Hello and welcome to Wake Up. It's Monday, the 3rd of August, 2026. How are you all? British summertime. I'm Sonia Poulton, Grand Rising, Fazana and Drumstick and Angela and Shinri. And I saw somebody had just made it to the comments for the first time and I've missed it. Whoa. And congrats with your new job, Drum. Great. Good to hear it. And hello, everybody. How are you all? I hope you are all well. Gary says an oasis of humanity and sanity in a world gone mad. We love the sound of that. Grand Rising. That was a cold start, bass driver. Not quite sure what happened, right? Started and then it just stopped for me. How are you all? I've exercised the tech genie for you, Sonia. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Welcome to the show that knows we look like our habits. So if you don't like the way you look, change them. Your habits, that is. Boom! Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. Isn't it amazing how we have the capacity to keep starting again and again and again if we need to? How are you? You like the Grand Rising greeting, do you? Good to hear it. Merry Monday. Little dragged in Wales land, says Bethany. Oh, and there are some nasty people on YouTube. Yes, there are. But I hope I'm not one of them. I hope I'm not one of them. Mr. Dunham is not happy with some people. And who can blame him? How are you all? I hope you are well. We have a busy show. I'm going to get cracking. We have 3 guests who are scheduled for today, and let's hope all of them turn up. We have Martin Davis of the Freedom Alliance is going to be talking about standing in the Clacton by-election. We have Matt O'Connor of Fathers for Justice, and we have Jen from the Luke Mitchell campaign, plus news, comment, wake-ups, wind down, all the usual stuff. And lots of things that the live chatters are saying to me, which will be great. Good to have you with us. Thank you for being here, wherever you are, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Rumble, whether you're watching us on playback, on Spotify. I appreciate you all. Thank you for being here. I truly do. So let's have a quick look at what's going on around the world. Kind of crazy out there, don't you think? Can anybody explain to me what the heck happened in Spain, the Spain-Morocco border? So what we saw at the end of last week was 50 to 60,000 migrants crossing into the Spanish North African enclave of Ceuta. And then apparently they went back again. 67 confirmed deaths, probably increased this morning. Very weird. Influx effectively equated to over 70% of Ceuta's total resident population. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez blamed human trafficking mafias for spreading self-serving rumors via social media. And the method of entry was thousands essentially went down to the sort of coastline, the breakwaters from nearby Morocco town of Fnaidek, and others attempted to scale or breach the border fences. It was a level of insanity as of August the 1st, which was Saturday. The Spanish Interior Ministry confirmed that the surge had been largely reversed. Anybody want to tell me what they think has gone on here? And why has Israel's foreign ministry congratulated Morocco? So what we have, let's be real here, Spain condemned Israel, right, for what they were doing. Netanyahu says Spain will pay the ultimate price. And then we see this huge, massive influx of tens of thousands of people going into Spain, and the Israel's foreign ministry congratulating to the Kingdom of Morocco, its leadership and its people. We extend our warmest congratulations on the occasion of the glorious throne day. What the hell does that mean? Anybody know? I mean, Israel, how is Israel involved in everything? How? Why? What? Where? When? How? Just don't know. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, of course it does. We know that. We know that a lot of the problems that we're dealing with in terms of immigration has a source, a base in Israel. We know that. We absolutely know that. Fokker says vindictive Zionist. Good morning, Katie. Good morning. Base Driver says money. Healing Guidance very wisely said, couldn't tell you, Sonia, I don't actually watch television. This is why I love this woman. She's bright. This is the Zionist Caligari plan in plain sight, says Derek. Truly in plain sight. Such a stark level of imagery that we have been subjected to. And if you remember on Friday's show, I was talking with Warren Thornton about this particular interaction, Netanyahu, and clearly my videos don't want to work on StreamYard today, but that's absolutely fine. Netanyahu, Pete Hegseth, and Marco Rubio. What noise did I just hear? That was kind of weird. And then we have Marco Rubio over the weekend saying, if you criticize Israel, you will not be granted a visa for the United States. Absolutely nothing if you criticize the United States. This is really very troubling indeed. Sarah says, Israel is an octopus. They're everywhere and have been for many years. Right. But it's now becoming so apparent that even people who refuse to look at it are being forced to. And it's interesting. And I agree with you, Dylan. The extreme Zionists give the rest of the 4x2s a bad name. Simon needs Warren back on. He was only on Friday, love. Get a grip. Perhaps Palantir listens in, says Mr. Dunham. See, we have such savvy viewers. It's wonderful. It's a pleasure and a joy to talk to our viewers. It really is. Right, moving on from that. So, yes, we know that Marco Rubio got his orders, and that's why he said what he did. And he's horrible. And they're definitely lining him up for a presidential run. There was this situation that happened in the High Court last week. Now, that is disturbing. James Essas has been with us before several times, and they lost in the High Court. Very disturbing stuff indeed. It's a puberty blockers failure, essentially. What's happening is, and we've heard about it for a long time, but James Essas and Kira Bell, who is a detransitioner, they applied for a judicial review alongside groups like Bayswater Support Group. They argued that the Health Research Authority and regulators acted unlawfully by approving the Puberty Blockers Trial, which is up and coming, claiming puberty blockers are failed medical intervention and that the study design lacked proper safeguards regarding bone density, fertility, and long-term harm. Mr. Justice Chamberlain in the High Court rejected the application for a judicial review, determining that none of the legal grounds presented had a realistic prospect of success, which allows the NHS-backed Pathways trial to proceed. And we are all very, very disturbed by it, or at least anybody with a thinking mind. And this actually follows Dr. Hilary Cass's review, which concluded that the existing evidence for youth gender intervention, such as puberty blockers, was remarkably weak. And yet, for some reason, Mr. Justice Chamberlain seemed to think that there wasn't enough here to take it further. This worries me. And as you can see from James Ess's tweet, our loss in the High Court paves the way for hundreds of children to be used as guinea pigs in the puberty blocker trial. Worse still, the UK government will pay these kids up to £500 in vouchers to take part. We are living in truly terrifying times. And Owley, excellent point. Reminds me of the C19 jab. If these blockers are welcomed, why are children being bribed to take them? Excellent point. Excellent point. Paying the children. Yes, Lil George, paying the children. And it's just so egregious what they are prepared to do. Horrible, horrible stuff. Let me just tell you about this story before I bring in our first guest. At least 5 women who were sexually abused by the departed billionaire Mohammed Al-Fayed have now been confirmed to be victims of human trafficking and modern slavery. Over 157 victims have reported allegations of sexual assault, rape and trafficking involving Al-Fayed to London's Metropolitan Police. Mohammed Al-Fayed famously owned Harrods. His son Dodi was also very famously killed in the same car accident as Princess Diana. And what you have is these 5 trafficking victims who have been able to come forward and show a clear path of how they were trafficked over periods of years. A trafficking system that operated mirrored a highly organized trafficking network. These people never operate alone. It would be impossible for them to. There are people around who are also responsible, and they still exist, and they're still walking this earth. And if they can't get Mohammed al-Fayed, then they should get his enablers and his handlers. He died in 2023 at the age of 94 without ever facing criminal charges. And, you know, it is awful, really, in part, that these things always happen when these very wealthy and powerful people die. And people often jump on it and say, oh, well, they're only doing that now to make money and it's opportunism. But the truth is, a lot of the time, alleged survivors are scared to come forward when these people are still alive because of the power that these people hold. And we know for a fact that Mohammed al-Fayed regularly gave Harrods baskets to serving Metropolitan Police. They were compromised. They were compromised. Ide says al-Fayed was a government asset. There you go. Right. Going to bring in my first guest now, but I'm very glad that they have actually converted that to trafficking, because now they'll be able to have a wider remit of what has really taken place. Because when they look at it in isolation, that it's only Mohammed al-Fayed, it doesn't really add up. There's a Sarah Ferguson link in there somewhere. Just need to dig a bit, said Base Driver. Exactly like Savile. Yeah. We find out eventually, don't we? Right. Let us bring in our first guest, because he's here. And he's been with us before. Martin Davis of the Freedom Alliance. How are you, Martin?
Very good, Sonia. Thank you for having me back on the show as well. It was quite a while ago, wasn't it? I think it was Climate and Nature Bill we were talking about back then.
It was indeed, which actually goes some way to proving that you've been on this for a little while, haven't you? Are you a former banker?
Yes, yeah. I'd actually only recently retired, I think, when we last saw you. And so I lasted 6 days before I became treasurer of this political party, and now I've been elected leader. So not meteoric, but certainly it's happened quickly after the retirement, and I've had 6 days of retirement.
Of course, you've joined me to talk about standing in the Clacton by-election. But before we get there, please give my viewers who may not be familiar with Freedom Alliance some idea of what your party stands for and why you came to be.
Yeah, so Freedom Alliance, I think if you look at the history of it back in 2020, was born out of the protest movement. It was when the lockdowns were happening, and we realized, I wasn't right there at the beginning, I joined in one, but we were there because we realized we needed some kind of political wing. Protests were great, and having that 1.5 million down in London and etc., fantastic, but we needed a broader voice. And so the guys then formed Freedom Alliance. There were a lot of parties that sort of popped up, smaller parties, etc., but we've stayed the course. And I think over the last 2 years, we've grown it into what we would describe as a full party. We've spent a long time on our policies. We badge it under the 3 words of freedom, fairness, and responsibility. We want some trust and honesty back into politics, alongside the basic principle of freedom of choice, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and all of that. So all our policies are based on principles, rather than saying, right, this is the policy because this is the zeitgeist or something, which we see in other parties and certainly the mainstream. So that's where we are carving out the niche, and it's very much built up from a principle level, when we're very much into the individual local being where the power should lie.
Right.
Completely anti-globalist. I was just listening to what you were saying earlier just now, and I couldn't agree more with some of the comments from your listeners as well. It's so true, and the great thing is people are starting to really genuinely realize who's pulling the strings, what's happening, day-to-day things that you're shown and stuff. Yeah, there is a hidden hand, etc. So wouldn't necessarily call it end of times, but it's end of times for certain people.
It certainly is. Would it be fair to describe you to a degree as like the anti-WEF party then? You say you're kind of anti-globalism.
In amongst everything else, yes, we're anti-supranationals as a whole. So you talk about WEF, you talk about WHO, IMF, BIS, everything like that. Anything that is trying to run the world as a whole, silently and behind the scenes as well. So Club of Rome, everything else like that. Yeah, we are against that, because we believe local communities are the strongest things you can possibly have. People enjoy it when their community is strong and vibrant. You have a nice life, and that's what everybody really wants.
I think we should return things to a much more sort of local scenario anyway. I think the problem is once we start to centralize everything, that's where a lot of the troubles have kicked in, right? So anyway, look, let's talk about Clacton. I was looking this morning, 35 people. Is that actually right? 35 candidates.
It's 34, and one of them has essentially thrown the towel in, but she will be on the ballot paper still. So
Right.
34, which is fully 12 more than the previous record. And nobody really knew this, but considering there are 20 independent candidates in there, there are 3 from the Monster Raving Loony Party. I've never seen them stand 3. Plus, there's the classic Count Bin Face, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So, all in all, I would consider there's probably 6 or 7 realistic candidates, but there are a couple of really good local people in there as well, and that may be the way that the Clacton voters tend towards this time, because they've just lost all trust in their own MP and in what's happened over the last 2 years, quite rightly so.
Right. Well, we need to talk about that, how this has come to be and why it's come to be. And obviously, Nigel Farage, it was their local MP, and Nigel Farage for Reform. And he created this by-election because everything was essentially finally piling on top for Nigel Farage after being given a very, very nice decade-plus long run in the media. And then suddenly everything's coming on top for their own agenda, I'm sure. I don't care what their agenda is. I want everybody exposed who's in public life doing dodgy things. So he was, as we know, given £5 million by a crypto billionaire. And then suddenly he came back into politics because he went out of politics and then he came back into politics. Shortly following that, there almost seems to be a daily Nigel Farage kind of leaky story now. And so he essentially resigned from being a member of parliament, and that created this by-election. And they said that they were going to pick up the cost of it. Is that still happening? Reform still picking up the cost of this by-election?
No, they can't. They said they would, but I believe they probably knew that they wouldn't be able to anyway. So the council came out pretty rapidly after that and said, we can't do that, because that would create a bias, an instant bias from that. So the council had to refuse it. Fair enough, they said they would pay for it, but they can't.
So chances are, like you say, they probably already knew that anyway. They just knew it would look good. So what do you object to about this by-election occurring in the first place?
So I liken it to when have you seen an innocent man ask for a jury trial? I don't think it's ever happened. So if he genuinely has nothing to hide, then why resign? Because he's a sitting MP. I've never seen it happen before. So there's no reason whatsoever to go and trial by Clacton voters, as he describes it. He wants to get the backing. He has their backing. He had their backing in 24. So carry on. And then ride whatever you need to ride because you're innocent. Well, that's where I come back and say, why ask for a jury trial, essentially? So I think that aside, he's done it within the democratic law, but is it really within the spirit of it? If you can call a by-election, resign your seat, and then stand in that by-election, I think it's completely wrong. And props to Count Binface, at least he's called that out in amongst his amusing 99p flakes and things like that. He actually has called that out. So I think everybody understands that. And when I've been talking to even Reform voters, people with the big Reform signs in their gardens and things, even they say it's wrong, but I don't see who else I can vote for.
Right. Do you think that there is a worry with this many candidates that people will literally go to that kind of default position of this is almost too many for me to look at? I don't know half of these people. A lot of these people have no local interest whatsoever. We're gonna chances are he's going to be voted back in, right? Is that your sense?
Yeah, I completely expect this to be a tactical vote. You either support Reform and you'll continue to support them. You will think there's nobody else, so I'll have a laugh and do bin face. But I do think this underestimates the sense of feeling in Clacton as well. They're not happy about being made a mockery of, with Binface being pitched against Farage in the media. And they're saying, so what have we got a choice of? Nigel Farage, whatever you think of him, or to put a bin in as an MP.
Right.
To be a laughing stock forever.
Right.
So it's a shame 34 as it's been that big. We know 15 of them have provided the campaign leaflets, etc. So a lot of people are just doing on the ground stuff. But I actually think it might have a reverse thing, and it would just lower the turnout. I think people will get so confused that they might just not bother.
I agree, and I am concerned about that, but I'm also concerned about what you've just mentioned there, and you mentioned it to me in correspondence, and that's about media bias. Because the moment that media set this up as Nigel Farage versus a bin, most people are going, if they're voting, are going to go for the human, not the bin, right? That is the reality. But so the media bias, the media, aside from kind of independent media, but does media in general, legacy media, have they shown any interest in independent candidates?
Yeah, short answer is no. They showed more interest right at the very beginning, before even the nominations were accepted. So as an example, I've just done some analysis on the 31 local articles that came out, and 7 of those were actually done for candidates who aren't even standing now. So the rest, it's something like about 75% of all articles published by the local Gazette then have been about Farage and Binface. And 24 candidates have not even been mentioned, other than one article where they listed all of them. So my issue is not about media bias or anything. Everything has an editorial, as you well know. But my issue is, do the voters know what their choices are? And what is the role of media when you have something as high profile as this,
right,
to those local people? And I feel a bit sorry for them, really, because they're sat bewildered as to, well, who do I vote for? And there will be people in there who absolutely meet their values. Some good people, not necessarily us, it could be somebody else. But if they meet your values, you should vote positively for those people, rather than be left with this tactical voting choice as it appears from the media. So I'm not sure they're doing their job brilliantly for the individuals. And if you're the local paper, you'd think you'd be putting on a hustings. They haven't done that. You'd think you'd be out there talking to the people. As a simple example, the last one we had was Count Binface in a Toby Carvery. So that was yesterday, when I know that there were candidates canvassing at Comic-Con, which was just down the road, at the Tendering Veterans Rally, all sorts of things where people could have had a proper discourse with somebody, even a local, who was standing as an independent. It's not happened.
It's almost like legacy media, quite unintentionally, is actually showing us what fast the whole thing is, really. And that, I think, is the take home for a lot of people. I know that one of the things for your party, which I completely agree with, is the whole idea of ending corporate sponsorship for members of parliament. And that obviously absolutely applies to reform, as it does for everybody else. I mean, just to be clear here, I don't necessarily set Nigel Farage, in opposition to anybody else, because a lot of them are up to it. We know about the infiltration of the UK. We know about the lobbyists, certainly like the Israeli lobbyists. We know about all of that. But he does seem to be sort of ahead of the field, like Boris Johnson was, right? In terms of quite how much he's taken in, how many additional jobs. What about additional jobs? I don't think members of parliament should be doing additional jobs either. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the other part that we're talking about with corporate sponsorship is to actually set MP salary at the average of their constituency. Right. So I'm not talking about, I know it's a bit radical, but they could still get expenses. So if you're in the north of Scotland, for example, you need still to get down to Parliament if you're an MP, if you're a Westminster MP, so you still need your travel, etc. But if it's set at that, then I see no reason why you can't earn additional money from speeches and things like that. But second jobs, I agree. You can't do your job properly. No. 7 days, 5 days, 7 days a week without A, being in the locale, so you actually understand it, and C, being economically connected. That's why we're talking about having MPs' constituencies matched against that. You are then economically connected to the people you represent, which, as a side issue, that might stop all the Oxbridge people suddenly thinking, great, I'll have 98 grand thanks just for representing somebody in Parliament, and I'll be round my mates in Westminster. That's why we're talking about it, because we think it's much better for ordinary people then to get to represent all their locale.
Yes, absolutely. Because the problem is that nobody knows who to trust. There's that thing of MPs should be like racing cars, and that is they should have all their corporate sponsors written all over them so we can see clearly who they're up to their eyeballs, in hock with. And that does always concern me. For about 14 years ago now, I did an investigation series for the Daily Express, which was about the NHS, their health and social care bill. And it turned out, I think if I remember correctly at the time, 312 Lords and MPs who were voting for essentially the privatisation of the NHS had some interest in a private healthcare company. And I was told that couldn't happen at a local level, yet it was allowed to happen at a national level. That seems extraordinary, Martin. Still going on.
And it will go on until somebody actually breaks it open, which is why we set this out. It's a radical statement. I'm sure nobody will ever vote for it. If it's the MPs, they just keep voting themselves up on this one. But at least it gets it somewhere in the narrative that says,
yes,
there is an alternative way of doing this. And if you genuinely are in the local and you're interested in your local community, then it might encourage people in the local community to go and stand, whether they stand for Freedom Alliance or a different party, but somewhere where that trust can start to come back into politics. And if what we're doing now in 5 years' time, it brings that semblance of trust, brings that honesty, brings that people recognize that the local community is having an effect, I think that's a win in itself, regardless of what happens at a national level. So,
and I agree with you. The moment that you introduce it into the narrative, it becomes a talking point, right? Almost regardless, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, almost regardless of whether you win or not. The fact is that immediately that you are saying we need this level of accountability, that then starts to be normalized as part of the narrative, which is really great. So, Martin, before you leave us, your message to the people of Clacton, and what date is this by-election? Is it
is Thursday the 13th. Thursday the 13th.
Okay.
My messages from Freedom Alliance, we talk about positive politics, and positive politics is simply about finding the representative who most meets your values and beliefs. Don't vote tactically, vote for the person that you genuinely think can represent you properly. We'd like to think it's Freedom Alliance, but if it's not, I'd much rather you vote for a local independent than Count Binface, for example, and get somebody real into Parliament. Right,
exactly. I do have a question for you. Fokker Film says, question for Martin. I had a look at the FA website. Have you rolled back the English devolution policy?
No, not yet. We don't have there are an awful lot of ways of describing this and managing it. And whilst we would have a policy of wanting to get it down to local level, then the mechanism by which we do it is to be decided.
Derek wants to know if your party has a Friends of Israel lobby.
We don't have any lobbies. That's the whole point. We're only membership funded. We have no sponsorship, none. And so it makes it tricky when you get to doing a full by-election like this. But that's what we're proud of. We're built from the bottom upwards, and we will always be so.
Nikki says, don't give up, Martin. Sounds like a
Thank
good
you very
point
much.
to end our conversation. Good to have you with us. Martin Davies, everybody, from the Freedom Alliance.
Thank you, Sonia.
Have a great week. Take good care of yourself. And not easy at all, but more power to his elbow, frankly. And you know what, that whole discourse of Farage versus Binface is like humorous and all that, but it is like they're taking the pee out of us, isn't it? That's how it feels to me anyway. Before I welcome in my next guest, let's hope he arrives, I want to talk about this man, Noel Edmonds. Anybody seen what he's been up to? Kind of like it, right? In my occasional series of celebrities doing good things, more occasional than I would actually like it, but there you go. Many famous people are overprivileged and over entitled, but sometimes you get one that comes along and does the right thing. Enter Noel Edmonds and his wife, Liz, proving you can do good things with fame or you can do bad things. You can be a casual bystander to misery or you can take action. And they took action. What happened was on the Isle of Man. I'm not sure if they live there, but that's where they were. And they happened across 2 live lobsters. And they, like me, definitely do not like to see live lobsters swimming around in a tank ready to be boiled alive. Horrible, horrible stuff. So they bought the lobsters and then they release them into the sea. Now, some people are like, that's an insane thing to do because they've been tank raised, they've been transported, but you know what? And people also talk about how there's an ecosystem risk to releasing animals back into the wild after they've been raised or captured in captivity of some sort, right? And the ecosystem risk is if wherever you kind of release the lobsters, you can introduce foreign pathogens which can damage the local marine ecosystems. That's what they tell us. But also it can be very hard for the lobsters to readjust to that sort of environment after being sort of trapped in a tank, frankly. But you know what? If they're going to be boiled alive anyway and eaten anyway, why not let them take their chances in the sea? Good on Noel Edmonds and his wife, Liz, I say. I like this sort of stuff. This stuff appeals to me. I like people who are prepared to do, go out a little bit. Noel's proven to be something of a deep thinker in recent years. Had his issue with his bank, if I remember correctly. I met him once, seemed very pleasant. I went to the recording with my daughter of a program that he used to do for Sky about school children asking him questions. So he seemed, very okay. Fine, as far as I could ascertain. But yeah, he seemed fine to me. And I really like that action. That's my kind of action because it's activism in its own right, which is quite cool. Quite cool. Any thoughts on it? I'm sure our live chatters will have something to say about that. How are you over on Rumble, by the way, kids? Grand Rising Wee Fat Shug is on Rumble. Hello, Joanne. Hello, June. How are you? And Taffy Pat, of course. Brazen Red is there as well. Gaia Green is there. 500 quid to take beta blockers. That's crazy, isn't it? Isn't it absolutely insane? The insanity that is going on. Lobsters' lives matter too, says Pete. Yeah, I agree with you, Pete. Absolutely, they do. Simon, Sonia is like my old English teacher. I got a B. Thank you for your super chat. You absolute star. What a sweetheart. Now, where's my guest? Well, he's not here yet. So I'm going to carry on with a news story that actually, no, he's just arrived. So listen, I'm going to pick up that news story later because I really want to chat with Matt. Matt's a badass. He is. And yes, you are Matt O'Connor. I can see you laughing at that description. Let's bring him in. Matt O'Connor from Fathers for Justice. Lovely to have you with us, Matt. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I am magnificent, Sonia. Sorry, I didn't log in and I was sitting there. At my age, technology is a challenge, and I suddenly realised, I've got to click on the button. So
lovely to have you with us. Oh, not a worry at all. I'm so glad you're with us, Matt. I've grown up. Well, I say I've grown up, but I've certainly watched from afar a lot of your exploits. You are the founder and leader of the Fathers for Justice organisation, and Fathers for Justice, to my understanding, was founded to give equal rights to both fathers and mothers because there has been for a very long period of time a bias within English courts, often towards the mother, to exclude the father. Am I right so far? Have I got that wrong?
You got it absolutely right. There is a integral institutional discrimination against fathers simply and incredibly on the basis of their gender. So while the law itself is not stupid enough to prescribe institutional discrimination in law, it is the application of the law in reality in our secret, and these are secret family courts, that unaccountable, unelected, unsackable judiciary operating in complete secrecy, the sort of secrecy that you would be more akin to Putin's Russia or to Kim Jong-un in North Korea. But it exists here in what is supposed to be a progressive modern democracy. And the discrimination is this, but starting point is number one, fathers have no rights in law to see their children. As a father, you've got zero rights.
Still, in 2020, that's extraordinary.
Yeah. So the legal position is that successive governments have said they do not believe that a legal presumption to contact would be helpful. So basically what that means is your only right, if you separate from a mother, your only right is to make an application to court to see your children. So you have no legal rights. People get confused. They think they've got parental rights, responsibilities.
Right.
Those only affect your ability to obtain educational and medical information on your children. It does not give you a legal right to see your kids in law. So that's the starting point. What we campaign for, well, when I started the campaign 25 years ago, I thought this was a no-brainer. I thought we'll be in and out in 3 years. Who's going to argue? Who in their right mind is going to argue against parental equality? We have equality for everybody. I mean, like literally everybody's got equal rights these days. So why not dads? And I am that stupid. I mean, I'm that stupid tattooed on my forehead to think that I could change the law in 3 years and give fathers equal rights. The same rights. We're not asking for more rights than mothers. We're asking for the same rights.
Right.
As mothers.
It's not a big ask, is it? I mean, to be very clear, I've dealt with both bad mothers and bad fathers, right? Over decades. There are. Of course there are. Yes. And there are some parents who should have absolutely no contact whatsoever with their children. I think both of us are in that position. But for the most part, there is this clear bias which is operating. We've seen it in action. And the thing that I've always thought was effective and, you know, full of impact with Fathers for Justice was the direct action that you've taken. And I know that Fathers for Justice became much more known for stunts, but in part, that's not necessarily a bad thing because you were raising a lot of awareness. But before we get there, because I have to say my favorite one was the balls on TV. And I do have an image of that. I love that one. That one. Well, I particularly like Kate Garraway's react. They were terrified, right? But we're going to get to that in a minute, right? Very briefly. But you started this for a personal reason, right? You were impacted by this situation yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I went through a very difficult, very painful divorce and separation. And I couldn't believe, I mean, literally, it was an absolute baptism of fire because I couldn't believe I had no rights in law to see my children, and they could be stopped like that. So one minute I'm sitting on the sofa watching Star Wars with the kids, the next minute I'm abandoned, like a left for dead at the side of the road.
Devastating.
And was going through the family court, Sonia, and I can tell you it was hell. It was like a living bereavement that I couldn't see my own beloved boys, so I'm pleased to say now are grown up and been spectacularly successful, and who I see, and all three of my sons are great, and we go to the pub together and we do all these things together. But back then, it was absolutely horrific. And I actually started seeing my children because I threatened to walk away completely. I was drinking too much. Sir Jack of Daniels was my spiritual advisor. Great while the times are good, not so great when the times are bad. I was suicidal, absolutely suicidal. I was destroyed. My life was like ground zero. Couldn't see my kids, couldn't get into my house, couldn't get my belongings, nothing. I had no money. And was in the family court. So on the last day I was there, I climbed up onto the table and I said to the judge, you know, I've had enough. I'm not going round on this hamster wheel of misery anymore. I'm walking out. And next time I come back, there'll be 200 fathers with me, right? And I'm going to put you out of a fucking job if it's the last thing I do on God's earth.
Yeah. And
I jumped off the table, walked out, and Maggie Derrick, God bless her, she was a Kafkas officer. She said, Matt, where are you going? I said, I'm done. Do you know what happened, Sonia? 2 weeks later, I had the children up with me for Christmas.
Wow.
And because the mother realised I was absolutely intending to go, I wasn't going to continue.
Right.
And it was resolved incredibly, just like that, in that one dramatic action. And I thank God, I'm blessed, I'm lucky. I saw my children, but I started Fathers Justice after that. So I don't think I could have done it if I was still emotionally compromised by being involved with my case. I still had the pain of it. And I remember starting it, and I remember every day was like getting up, running down the stairs and smashing your head against a brick wall. But my anger was burning. Even though I seen my boys, I was so upset, and I could not believe the injustice, the cruel inhumanity of a system that spits fathers out, just because of their gender. Now, as you rightly said, there are good dads, bad dads. There are good mums and there are bad mums. The difference is they're not judged the same in the family courts. A bad mum, and though I raise people like the Katie Prices and the Kerry Katonas with all their issues, will be allowed to see their children, will be allowed to look after kids. But if you applied that same standard to the fathers, you'd never see your children again. And that's what we deal with here for 25 years. This Siberia of the broken, men who are not angry, they're not particularly resentful. Most of the dads that we deal with here are broken.
That's the reality, isn't it? Because it is devastating. I cannot imagine anybody telling me that I couldn't have had or been around or been there to see my daughter grow up. That would have devastated me. And I did mention to you that my daughter's father and I separated when she was 3 years old, and there was a lot of animosity between us, but we worked so hard to make sure that that didn't impact our child as much as possible, that she knew both sides of her family, that she had a relationship with her father as much as her mother. And I think we've done that successfully. She's 28 now, very well rounded, but it's not easy. Obviously, when there's like broken hearts involved and anger and all of that, it's not easy. But isn't your ex-wife involved in Fathers for Justice?
Well, she is. Nadine, God bless her. She's a tough woman. My nickname for Nadine is Lady Balls, because she's tough. She's got cojones. But she deals a lot of our casework. She's an amazing advocate for men, for fathers in court. Every day she's pretty much in court, and she's up against, highly trained, skilled, experienced barristers, and a lot of the time she is winning. And the responses of some of the mothers to this is, she deals with a lot of hostility, a lot of threats. Last year in the High Court, she was representing one of our dads. The dad got shared care, got to live with both parents order. Fantastic. The mother, who was Russian, did not take this well, and came over, called her evil, Nadine evil, and I think she spat at her.
Oh.
I said to Nadine, it's a shame she didn't film that. We could have put it up on TikTok and use it as a badge of honor. But she was not happy.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's interesting about your approach, because you understand marketing. You understand what garners attention, and that, I think, has worked so well for you. And you said to me the other day, people only think of you in terms of stunts, but let's not underestimate the importance of those stunts, because that's what absolutely catapulted Fathers for Justice and the cause into the national consciousness. So a couple of people in the comments say, I remember Buckingham Palace as one example. Buckingham Palace was, I think, Batman, right? I think I've got an image here.
Correct. Yeah. Batman of Buckingham Palace. Yeah. One of ours. Yeah.
And
that was an interesting story, because we hadn't planned to do that. And I think I came up with the idea on a Saturday, and we decided to do it on the Monday. And I'd driven past Buckingham Palace in my car and thought, it sounds really kind of simple, but I thought, we get a ladder up on, I think it's the Eastern Annex. We could run around the ledge. So it took about 2 minutes planning, but the issue was trying to get people, trying to find somebody to do it, because it was obviously quite a dangerous protest. And but we managed to do it, and it was a spectacular protest. But what the idea was, Men in Tights was always that we were meant to be self-deprecating, ironic, eccentric, Men in Tights, putting talcum powder down there to stop the chafing and all this sort of thing, and overweight guys in lycra. People used to say to me, Matt, are you Superman? I said, no, I'm more like the Michelin Man than Spider-Man. If you see me in lycra, which I can promise you is not a great look. But the idea was to put something iconic on an iconic building that everybody would recognise from Brighton to Bogota. And that's what the idea was, also to have humour, So a lot of it was inspired by, I don't know if you remember, The Only Fools and Horses, Del Boy, Heroes and Villains Christmas special, when they're running through the streets of Peckham as Batman and Robin. So
I remember it. Yes.
Yeah. So there was that kind of British sensibility. But it was dangerous because, I mean, these days you would be, I have no doubt about it, you'd be shot.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was brave then. I mean, the thing is, I think that a lot of this takes a lot of guts, right? It really does. And as somebody who's doorstep people, that takes courage in its own right. But this is a whole nother level, because you're breaking laws, you're breaching protocols, you're doing all manner of things.
Well, actually, we didn't break any laws there. We were, because there was no such thing as trespass on a royal property at the time.
Wow.
And I think they tried to prosecute us on the basis that we'd broken a bit of pigeon wire. And that obviously fell through. So there was actually no law broken there in doing what we did, ironically. But we did break laws, and, you know, from time to time. But we always tried to keep it with a sort of sense of humour, you know, wherever we could try to keep it funny, because governments can't argue with the sound of laughter. That's always been my argument.
Right. Good point. Now, as I said earlier, this was probably my favorite, and because it's the reaction that's going on. But I want to just preface this, because you actually said something very serious about what led up to this point. And that was when you got to Good Morning Britain, an ITV program, which I've contributed to many, many times. But when you got there, you were treated completely differently. They essentially isolated you, and that you had an issue with that, because it was like they were treating you like some kind of leper. Right. And so you then stand up and say, I'm going to get my balls out now. I think something along those lines. And Kate Garraway and the other co-hosts are like, what the heck? What the heck? They were terrified, right? They were absolutely terrified. So your point that you were trying to make there, Matt, what was it?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I've, like you, done breakfast television on ITV for years, when it was GMTV and all different formats. And, you know, you go to the green room, you sit there, you're with other guests. So I think I was with was the guys from Location, you know, Phil and Kirsty were there, and then the guest, the woman sat beside me there, she was there, but then I got marched out by security. They clearly didn't want me speaking to her, and the debate was scrapping Father's Day, and that week we'd done this campaign with these knitting nans who knitted 650 scrotum-coloured testicles to send to MPs to say balls to a Father's Day. So I was sat outside. I rang my wife at the time, Nadine, and said to her, this is terrible. I'm sat outside, been marched out like a criminal. And she said, oh, don't do the show, don't do the show. And I thought, no, I'm going to do it. But as in the old adage, when you've got lemons, you make lemonade. When you've got scrotum-coloured knitted balls, you use scrotum-coloured knitted balls. So I went to the toilet. Security guard followed me to the toilet. I got the bag out. I just shoved a load of these balls into my pants. And then during the interview, because it was three mothers interviewing a dad about scrapping Father's Day, would you imagine three men being interviewed discussing scrapping Mother's Day? It wouldn't happen. No. And then just, I mean, all I could do was do what I did, add the balls, and the rest, as they say, was history. But I mean, they weren't very happy. No, fair. But the woman beside me, God bless her, the other guest, she spent quite a bit of time staring at my crutch. I don't know what she thought was going to come out, but she looked quite excitable. That's all I can say. But it was only pink, fluffy, scrotum-coloured knitted balls by our wonderful knitting nans that were also highlighting the fact that grandparents also have huge issues seeing their grandchildren.
That is absolutely true too. You're absolutely right. And again, all praise to my daughter's grandmother, who's still alive. Wonderful. We took her out for her birthday last week. And again, I really appreciate, we're so fortunate. We have been fortunate, but that also takes effort, doesn't it? On both sides, you know, everybody wants the same thing, and that is the best for the child, right? Regardless of animosity. So I do know how hard it is. So they're all laughing in the comments about some of your stunts and everything. Aren't you scared though, when you were like preparing for that moment and you stood up and you started to fumble with your zip and everything, and they were like, what goes through your mind?
Well, you got to do what you got to do, haven't you? I mean, some people say, you know, I'm sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel there, or doing stuff which is irresponsible. Well, I just find it quite entertaining and amusing, and I mean, providing it's funny and people found it funny. But you got to do what you got to do, and I made a career out of scraping the bottom of the barrel on many occasions.
Yes.
So don't knock it. But yeah, we were trending worldwide. I don't think my kids were too impressed because they were like going, "Oh, Dad, you're trending on Twitter," oh, you know. And so the children could be a little bit, the boys can be a little bit critical. But I think now, as they've got older, they go, "Rock on, Dad."
Exactly.
My eldest boy said to me, we're out for dinner the other week. He said to me, for the first time ever, he said to me, "Dad, I'm so proud of you."
Oh, that's so lovely when they get to that point, isn't it?
I was in tears. I was like, because all I've ever wanted to do, I mean, Fathers for Justice is not just about stunts or protests or about helping dads. It is a love story. It's about my love for my children.
I used to say that. Oh, bless your heart. Listen, I used to say that to guys. I covered one activism where two guys got up on the arch around Marble Arch and they went on a hunger strike. And again, it was that whole thing of, you know, I hope that eventually my children will understand why I'm doing this. And I do think these things come full circle, because my attitude always has been, Matt, even if you are denied access to your children, there will come a day when they will realize you fought with everything, every fiber of your being to try and get back to them again. Van Man said, "You're a legend." Nikki is enjoying this so much. Like, she thinks this is top comedy. And that is the thing, Matt, like you say, humor, so important. Yeah. And so just tell me, what's been your favorite stunt? Any of those that we've mentioned?
No, I don't. I've had some interesting ones. We've done all sorts of protests. I don't really have. I guess the first big one that we did was powder bombing Tony Blair in the House of Commons.
That was classic.
And that was an interesting one because a very good friend of mine, Guy Harrison, who did it, who's an absolute legend and veteran FJ campaigner. Guy had got tickets as a guest of Baroness Golding to go to the House of Commons. But we hadn't figured out what the protest was going to be. And at the end, I was inspired by a feminist protest, I think in 1972, at the Royal Albert Hall, where feminists powder bombed Bob Hope on stage. And so I was inspired by that. And I thought, why don't we use condoms? Yeah. Condom bomb a la Tony Blair. The recipe is in my very good book, published many years ago. And we used that with some self-raising flour, purple icing colourant, purple glitter, and we smuggled them in. And this is a comedy of errors, because I told the boys you got to wear tight Y-fronts, and of course they wore boxers, so they had to tie the condoms on the inside of their belt buckles, and their condoms were hanging down. It looked like a bull hadn't got his rocks off since the last fiesta, but nobody in national security was going to squeeze their balls to check them back in those days. So they smuggled them in that way. And because they were the guests of the Baroness, they just put a £500,000 security screen in. But my boys were sat in front of it. And all they had to do was Guy threw 3 condoms. The first 2 missed Blair, but the third one hit Blair between the shoulder blades. And the rest, as they say, was history, and it got them up off their backsides. Self-raising flour did the job, and then they're meant to stay stationary and seated in that event, but they obviously ran off like a bunch of cowards, thinking it was anthrax or something.
Yes,
and would have spread it across the Westminster estate if that had been the case. And they've never forgiven me for that. So.
Not that you're losing sleep over that, eh, Matt? Jay says in the comments, by the way, love this. It helped my brother at this time who had similar problems with his children's mother. Yes, 2 of them. Lol. So go on. What were you just going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, people say to me, Matt, what sort of politics do you have? And I said, I come from the Guy Fawkes School of Politics, the last man to enter Parliament with honest intention. So, so the powder bomb and the Tony Blair was in that kind of spirit, so I think it's important that, I think a lot of the recent protest groups, the Just Stop All and stuff, aimed at the public.
Yes.
And I think, if you want to challenge the establishment, you've got to take risks. You've got to go after the establishment itself, rather than affecting Joe Public the whole time. And I think that's a mistake that many of the new campaign groups make. And I think we always not always, but we always try to keep it, I say, funny, humorous, satirical, and those were important traits of our campaign.
You have been frequently accused of being a misogynist, a woman hater, because of your campaigns involving celebrities, such as you mentioned them, Kerry Katona, Katie Price. My objection, much more with Katie Price than Kerry Katona, is the glorification of truly dreadful parenting. And the fact that, actually, GMB, sorry, I've still got this on the screen. The fact that GMB, perfect example, will still bring on Katie Price to talk about absolute nonsense. Well, we know there's all this horrendous stuff going on in the background to do with her children. So how do you respond when people call you a woman hater for going after these female celebrities?
Well, I obviously never seen my wardrobe, firstly, Sonia, because I'm dressed down today. But if you see my jackets, you can see me from the International Space Station. Even look at these glasses and the hair. Look, check it out. I'm in touch with my feminine side. I had a beautiful, lovely mother. A third of our supporters are women. So my ex-wife works the campaign. There's nothing, not a misogynist bone in my body. I am pro equality. However, that is not a license to excuse the likes of the KKK, as I call them, the Kerry Katona, Katie Prices, who are, often got their own issues and challenges, but it's the double standards I hate. It's the double standards where these women are paraded as being goddesses, this kind of, the sort of Mother Teresa's, the sacred cows that cannot be questioned, who themselves have clearly got significant issues, but make all their money in the media, and the media are fully complicit in some really troubling instances with people like Katie Price, who's clearly got significant mental health issues, and yet she's paraded. She earns money from it. It's a deal with the devil, really, in terms of dealing with the media. But the most important thing that gets missed is the children. All these issues with children. I was involved in the Katie Price case. I've seen all the court papers. I know exactly what happened, and none of it's been published by the media because it's so shocking. It's so bad. And the same with the Kerry Katonas. These are mothers, significantly troubled mothers, but it's one rule for the mother, it's another rule for the father. And if the father does anything, that's it. You'll never see your children again. If it's the mother, say, for example, in the Katie Price case, the social worker from, I think it's West Sussex Children's Services, it turned out the social worker wasn't just working for social services. She was working for Katie Price.
Stop that.
Yeah, directly working for Katie Price. The Daily Mail were tipped off by somebody, don't know who. The Daily Mail were tipped off, and she lost her job from social services because she was actually working. She was in the pay of Katie Price, and that was a social worker. That'll give you some idea of the levels of corruption involving these women. But my job is, I know people have a go at me, but my job is why do we celebrate mothers like this? Why do we celebrate bad parenting? Why is it one rule for mums and another rule for dads? And why am I attacked for exposing it?
Right.
We are the only people out there saying anything about, there was a case of mine in class who denied Graham Quinn access to his kids. The last time he saw his children was for a 2-inch gap on a window on a motorway service station on the North Circular. There are cases, case after case after case, and it is a double standard, and it has to stop because these women are setting a dangerous legacy in place as role models for other mothers to follow. And that creates this kind of cycle of fatherlessness in this country where women think, oh yeah, I'll use the man, I'll get pregnant, I'll get all the benefits, I'll get the flat, get the house, etc., etc. So it's a purely economic decision to have sex with a man and then just give it to the man. You know, that's it. You know, job done. And then he's responsible for the next 20 years of paying child support. And
it really is a very difficult situation. I mean, I'm in no doubt about that whatsoever. I talk a lot about fatherless world though. And that is also some men not being good fathers, getting away with it because they didn't carry the child, they're off, they're not taking responsibility. But I am absolutely aware, because I've received so much correspondence over the years of women who weaponize their children as well. So I do know both of those things happen. And it's always the children who end up paying. And I absolutely agree. I am so angry at the glorification of celebrities. It's so incredibly wrong, because we need to be more factual about it. It was only recently that it came out that actually Peter Andre finally admitted that he'd had care of his 2 children for years, and Katie Price had not had care of them. And we know the other 2 children are under the care of the father and possibly somebody else now, because there's other stuff going on there. But I think we have to be careful because there's a live case. There's Harvey, but people always say, but she's such a great mother to Harvey, who is obviously a severely disabled child. But that also feels quite manipulative as well, Matt. And
she uses Harvey. I mean, God bless Harvey. I mean, but he's used as a human shield. Yeah, he is a human shield for Katie Price's worst excesses, drug taking, you know, flipping cars over. I mean, she incredibly accused me a few years ago of vandalizing her mucky mansion, right, of torching her car, and accused me of killing her dog. Now, I don't know what happened with the dog, but I'm guessing the dog saw her drug and drink driving and threw himself under the wheels of the car, praying for a merciful.
Well, she has a track record with animals the same way as her children, and the way that she talks about men and the fathers of her children is narcissistic in the extreme. She always attempts to belittle them, talking about how small their appendages and all that sort of stuff. Very publicly, horrible stuff. Matt, it's been a pleasure talking to you this morning, and I do mean it. You are a badass, because I think it takes something to do what you've been prepared to do. And also, didn't you once sell like breast milk ice cream or something? Did I get that? Is that something I've remembered wrong?
Yeah, no, I did a Viagra ice cream called the Sex Pistol, which the Sex Pistols tried to sue me over, and then I did a breast milk ice cream called Baby Gaga that Lady Gaga tried to sue me over. And it was, we thought it caused a ripple, but it was a storm in a D cup, Sonia. So there you go. It was one of those I'm always in trouble. What can I tell you?
It's in your nature. It's in your nature, Matt.
I'm a provocateur. What can I tell you? It's
very effective, though. Very effectively.
It's very kind of you. And Sonia, thank you so much for having me. And it's been a pleasure.
Stollyfile says, respect Matt, keep fighting the good fight. What a legend, says Nikki. And of course, in the comments, saying that single parents aren't necessarily the problem, right? No, I was a single parent, and very proudly so, and worked my rocks off to make sure I was a decent single parent. So single parents aren't the issue. Obstructive weaponizing.
Well, I'm a single parent. I'm a single parent. I mean, you know, we're all many of us are single parents. It doesn't mean that single parents are all mums, because there are a lot of single parent dads. But what we want is, you know, fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers come together in common cause. And the best way to improve our outcomes for our children, our families, and our country is the presumption of shared care, 50-50 shared care. So children get the best of both their parents. That's my gospel.
Absolutely. Fokker Film says, keep on rocking, Matt. Lovely. Lovely to have you with us. Matt O'Connor from Fathers for Justice, everybody. God bless you, darling. Take care. Wonderful. And wonderful and feisty. Love that sort of stuff. And I know he's been controversial. Absolutely. I mean, I don't invite people on because they're not controversial. I invite them on because I think they have a good story to tell. And God bless you, Matt, and thank you, says Sass. The ruling class like dividing men and women too. They certainly do. No doubt about it. I want to bring in my next guest. Let's not keep her. Thanks, Matt, says Healing Guidance. My next guest sort of follows on from what I was saying on Friday to do with Luke Mitchell. And well, let's bring her in. I'm sure Jennifer is more than capable of explaining for herself why she's here today. Jennifer Gale, everybody, from the Luke Mitchell campaign. Hello, Jen. How are you?
I'm very well. We've had a very difficult week. We said goodbye to an incredibly brave woman on Thursday. I must say that I've been waiting for this for many years, dreading this for many years, and feeling that what everybody desperately wanted, what Corin desperately wanted, was to see her son free. And we knew years ago that this was unlikely. Her health was deteriorating, but she astounded doctors, she astounded everybody. She hung on, but she was only mortal. She did absolutely astound me. I had years ago thought, oh my goodness, we're really running out of time here. And she was such a she was incredible. Corin Mitchell,
phenomenal human being. Let me give some background. Corin Mitchell, as you say, or Corin probably, and I always mispronounce names, so please forgive me. So astonishing. Her son, Luke Mitchell, obviously was convicted of the brutal killing of 14-year-old schoolgirl Jodie Jones in Dalkeith, Midlothian. Subsequent conviction of Luke. And this picture always touches my heart because as a mother, I almost feel I know what she's almost saying to him. It's okay, son. We know this is wrong. We're going to get this sorted. We've got you. That's what that picture feels like to me.
Well, I remember I was writing about how the media were presenting this, and I showed my dad this picture. And my dad really devoured newspapers. Both of my parents did. And he said, I've never seen that picture. And I said, no, you wouldn't. That's not a picture the Scottish media wanted people to see. And the thing is, that day he's interviewed on Sky News, and then there's pictures of him at the grave laying flowers. And then in media reports, they say he hugged his mum for 5 minutes, as though, you're going to your girlfriend's grave. You think it's strange that you'd hug your mum for a bit. But when he stops hugging his mum after that, his face is visibly tear-stained. But they presented that as, he's angry. Because he was angry, because he was obviously aware of the paparazzi, or whatever you want to call them. He was aware that suddenly, I think because they heard other journalists shouting, get back here. So he knows that he's being watched, and that was something they wanted to avoid. And that's something that he encountered that again at his mum's funeral on Thursday. And
that was quite weird to see him, Jen, because I haven't seen him obviously in the intermediate period. And it was quite weird to see him go from this 14-year-old child, right, to a grown man in his 30s. And the problem, there's so many problems about this story. So let's start to unpack the problems about this story. And of course, let me just bring in an image of Jodie, because we must never, ever forget Jodie in this. Jodie is absolutely a victim, just like Luke is, for those who believe in the innocence of Luke Mitchell. And Jodie and Luke, boyfriend and girlfriend, they had arranged to meet. Luke was, I think, on his way to see her. She never showed up. Then they went looking for her. There was a search, and it was Luke who found her body. And that seems to be the best thing that they have, the strongest thing they have to say that he's guilty. Talk to me.
Well, I mean, I would say this is the case that Corin and Luke would put. Sorry, Corinne. I know a Corin, so I'm often doing it as well, actually, even years later. It's terrible. But he got home from school. It was a normal Monday, and he did as he phone records show. It was very standard Monday. He rang the family business. Corin was self-employed. What do you want me to cook for dinner? She tells him. His gran hands the phone over to her, and she gets back from work about 5:15, and he's made a start on dinner. And then they have dinner, and he goes out to wait for Jodie. And he waits on a very, very busy road. And now at this point, it's a bright Monday. He sees neighbours coming back from work. He waits for a good hour. He waits for a very long time. So a very long time for people to see him. And then she does not have her phone. Unfortunately, it was broken. So the exchange to meet up was a very brief one. She had to get her mum's phone very quickly. And the Crown's case is that 37 minutes after that exchange, he had by that point murdered her. There's so much wrong there, and I hope you'll give me a chance to come to that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, then he goes out and meets friends. And so, you know, it angers me that as this has been reported, people say she didn't believe. Well, no, people asking her, why haven't you asked your son if he's guilty or not? Well, it doesn't make any sense. You know, her case has always, until the end of her life been, I came in from work at 5:15, he was cooking dinner. She's never deviated from that at any point. So it's almost like asking her to ask him, you know, when I came in and you were cooking dinner, were you also committing murder at the same time? It doesn't make sense. It's not a case of faith. It's a case of he was with me.
Yeah, it's just not a conversation you'd have. It would make absolutely no sense between two people who knew where they were.
No, and I think it's very late that night. He's taking Mia, the German Shepherd, out for her last pee, and he gets a call. Well, first it's a text, and then he rings and says, no, she never met up. But the Crown's case, also Mia was a trained tracker dog. There's so much. I could talk about this forever, but the Crown's case is that 37 minutes after that initial exchange, he has killed her, and he has killed her with a fishing knife, not the fishing knife they took from his house. It's a different one, which has never been. Is there any evidence of two distinct fishing knives? No, there's not.
Right.
He killed her in imitation of a painting. There's no evidence he'd ever seen by a musician whose albums he did not at that time own. He and Jodie, I think, quite liked Marilyn Manson, but they were by no means big fans. Jodie was obsessed with Nirvana, you know, absolutely.
Right. And actually, she was probably much more of a kind of goth than he was, although he was portrayed that way in media. I saw it. I saw the way they portrayed him like some dark satanic creature. He was demonized.
Jodie was an obsessive music fan. It was very sexist. Now, Jodie, you see her there. She adored music. She loved live music. She loved exploring lyrics. She was obsessed with Kurt Cobain. She was quite a rebellious. She sounds amazing. She sounds an absolutely amazing girl. And in order for this to fit, she has to suddenly become this meek thing, you know. And actually, I think the evidence is that, you know, I think Luke had the best of Nirvana. Jodie would not have had the best of Nirvana. She would have had the whole thing.
Right.
So I think there's certain evidence that it was Jodie that introduced Luke to music, absolutely, because he liked Eminem. He'd even had the Eminem, you know, the bleach vanilla.
Right.
There was a very popular hairstyle at the time. So no, I think she was the obsessive music fan, absolutely. But the idea that she could have influenced him, oh no, because that wouldn't fit, would it? She has to be reduced, which is, I think, such a disrespectful thing to do. Yes, and the other thing is they say he was due to cannabis use, despite the fact that he's founder, he has his bloods taken, and he's not high on cannabis. I think he might have had a trace amount, but one of his friends, when he did actually then meet up when she failed to show up, I think they brought about an 11-year-old. So even if he was inclined to smoke cannabis, he probably wouldn't have smoked cannabis with a child.
But so what, though? Cannabis is not linked with being a murderer, right? It's not.
No, exactly. The point is, the Crown's case is that it was cannabis played a part. So you have these three things, and it sounds unbelievable. And I think because that is the Crown's case, there's a sense that we don't want people to look at that because it's ridiculous. I had a year of, I couldn't quite believe that. I thought, no, I couldn't believe my country would do that. Right. I couldn't believe in a case that was so stupid. I kept expecting someone to, you know, reveal something that would make it make sense to me. And it never, you know, 4 years down the line, that's not happened.
Lots of comments coming in, as I'm sure you would expect. And some of them are about the issues of the police. Aquaboy says, I'm Scottish. Police Scotland stitched this boy up. Police destroyed the DNA evidence that proved his innocence. And there is very much, I think I've been covering this story now for about 6 years. And there is very much a strong sense that the police decided it was him. And as we've seen with other cases, certainly I have as an investigative journalist, it's almost like when they decide it's somebody, they will make that case fit. And that's how it fell with Luke, even down to, you mentioned the Sky News. That Sky News report was horrible. That I think they allowed the reporter, didn't they, into the home, into the Mitchell's home. And the way that they stitched him, again, media, police complicity. How significant do you feel is the police role in this, if this is a wrongful conviction?
hugely significant, but I think it's quite hard to separate the kind of media and the police. I mean, the media want to work with the police. It helps their job to do that. And so there were clear ties there. And Neil Mackay of I think it's the Herald, said that he got a call from a senior police officer, and he'd never in his time ever had a call like this where somebody was saying he is definitely guilty. Never. And then some people on the red top said, oh, that's nonsense. And you think, well, Neil Mackay is saying that. He's I think he's editor-in-chief at the Herald. It'd be a very strange thing for him to say, because he'd be smearing senior police officers. So
Right.
it's a bit odd. Going back to the Sky News interview, the other thing that I find so maddening, I mean, it really is, it's heartbreaking, but it's also maddening, is in that interview, James Matthews says to Luke, what's this we hear about burning clothes? And Luke said, oh no, they just said that a female relative of a suspect admitted to burning clothes. James Matthews replies, and was that you or anyone connected with you? And Luke says, no, not that I know of. Everything about his demeanor is, nothing about that alarms him. And that must be true, because the police must have told him, yes, a female relative of a suspect has admitted to burning clothes, because why else would he say that? And then after Murder in a Small Town came out, and then the police did destroy evidence. And people say, oh, well, they're going to destroy it eventually. No, there's a procedure for these things. We have to know.
Yes.
And this was beforehand. They did, sure enough, find traces of burnt clothes from an address in Mayfield, which is a village not too far from it, but quite a walk. So that was true. So when the police said a female relative has done that, everybody in Scotland saw him say that. Everybody pretty much that had a TV, because everyone was glued to it. And so when this information comes out, you just think there's going to be an awakening, a mass awakening, that people are going to use their critical faculties and do something. And it didn't happen then. It didn't happen, I think when they destroyed evidence, that was front page news. Surely something is going to happen.
Right.
And I think Luke has, I don't know how he stayed sane, because I think throughout his life, he's had these moments where this is going to be it. This is going to be the time.
Oof.
And
Awful.
Murder.
Yeah, you mentioned Murder in a Small Town. I think that was the Channel 5 documentary, I think a two-parter. Excellent. And I can be highly critical of kind of output from legacy media, but that was actually excellently documented. But there have been a number of people who have come out and said quite clearly he couldn't possibly have done it. It's so circumstantial. The lack of forensics is extraordinary, given that there was DNA and forensics pertaining to other people at the crime scene, right, Jen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was. And I was asked, I did a podcast a wee while ago, and somebody said to me, oh, well, surely, because a number of names get thrown out there.
Yes.
I don't really want to get into that, because I feel that we need to exonerate Luke. Then we can do that. That's
then
very
they
much
can find who's responsible. Right. Got you.
I mean, that's not what I can say. This stinks. I can say this doesn't make any sense. Look into it, for God's sake. Free Luke Mitchell. Then solving this crime, I think, I would press for that. But this is the order at which I would like to do things. But I was asked, well, clearly none of those names could have matched those samples. And my response to that is, well, hang on. There was a sperm sample that matched Jodie's sister's boyfriend, and they came up with this ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous.
Wasn't it like the carrying on the jacket or something? Please remind me.
So there were semen patches on the T-shirt.
Right, that's it.
That matched Stephen Kelly, and the police didn't then think, like you would expect. Well, maybe go and search his house. Maybe let's see what he was doing. Let's look into this. They said, it must be a transfer from the washing machine. Now that relies on Jodie didn't live with her sister for one thing, and her sister didn't live with her boyfriend. So this is at the Grant's house. So this involves, unless he had really very strong semen, it doesn't really make any sense. But if the police are going to do that, if they're going to excuse somebody that way,
right,
I think they can excuse people in all kinds of ridiculous ways.
Right.
Just apply that in ways that perhaps I don't know. I mean, but if you can excuse someone that way, you can excuse those other samples in other ridiculous ways that perhaps we don't know about, I think the sample of burnt clothes, for example, they said, it was too far away. I haven't seen that written down, but I've heard that from others. So So you're looking for ways to excuse that are frankly ridiculous. So
Right.
I don't think
it doesn't make sense. So essentially, they applied one rule to him that they didn't apply to other potential people who were in the frame. Yes.
And the FBI also said it was. I mean, I think when the FBI came out and said, Police Scotland approached us for a profile of the killer, we said, you're barking up the wrong tree. The dynamic, the kind of, this was a lust killing, and that's not what you're going to find in a 14-year-old boy. If you just charge someone convenient, you think you can convict, that's disgraceful. That's what the FBI said. And it's just one of those things. These things happen. You expect an outcry, you expect the awakening, and it just doesn't come. So I think it hasn't come within Scotland. So I'm really glad that we're, I'm speaking to you in London.
Well, I'm always happy to talk to, because it took me a long time to really understand about this case, because like everybody else, or like a lot of other people, I bought into the whole idea, the demonization of it. This is a 14-year-old who lost his mind and lost control, all that sort of stuff. And then the more you look into it, the more you realize that it actually doesn't stand up under scrutiny, which is why it so alarms me. I deal with a lot of what I believe to be miscarriages of justice, whether that's Jeremy Bamber, whether it's Lucy Letby, whether it's Luke Mitchell. And there are similar traits, actually. And what I've realized, come to understand, is that the establishment, whether that's Scottish establishment or whether that's the English establishment, does not like to admit its mistakes, especially in situations like this, because that involves unpacking not only so much, but essentially holding other people responsible for this error. And it's not something that any establishment likes to do at all. So Luke has obviously maintained his innocence since the get-go, as indeed did his dear mum, which is why I found it so sad, the fact that her life ended before she was able to see the release of her son. He served his minimum 20-year term. He's had how many appeals is it for?
Loads. I think it is about 4. Yeah.
Nuts.
I think what we really would like to to talk about Corin today, because I think that was something that her suffering in this was, obviously she was campaigning for her son, but I don't think the public know quite what she was put through, and what she was put through for her insistence. He's done nothing wrong. He was with me. Because in order for her son to be convicted, she had to be destroyed. Her credibility had to be destroyed.
Yes.
And so charges were brought against her. And I don't know how. I have no idea how they managed to bring those charges of perverting the course of justice, because there's nothing there. There was no evidence of destroying clothes or anything like that. I mean, she'd actually reported Luke to school for smoking cannabis. That came up at the trial.
Right,
she did a difficult thing to do. That's a thing a good mum would do, but very few, I think, would. We don't want to report our kids to the school, but she did it. So I think that says something about her. She said it was a hard thing to do, but she did it. But they said, well, she got him a tattoo when he was 15, therefore she would lie. And you think that's one hell of a leap, isn't it?
Huge.
But she absolutely had to be humiliated and discredited. And then when her charges were dropped, she had no way of defending herself. That avenue, well, let's unpick these charges against me, that the media had been running with for a year. So they've got a really long time to bed in. She's had a year to be made a hate figure. And then when the chance comes to defend herself, charges are dropped. Now, she would have thought, probably, well, that's a good sign. If they're dropping the charges,
right,
then, this would be a good thing. No. So another thing she can do then is take a lie detector test. And she does it in front of the media. I mean, this is an incredibly brave thing to do, who have hounded her and hounded her.
Huge.
Her business has been set fire to countless times. She's been beaten in the prison car park. The Daily Record said this is when she visits her son. This is the kind of car she drives. They know where she lives. About that, So she's running a family business. So she's self-employed. She can't be signed off work. Under the strain of all of this, she has to keep going. And so her health is obviously destroyed by that, because she ends up losing everything. So Luke's family home gone, family business burnt down repeatedly. It's essentially just a shell that his mum ends up living in. There's no running water. There's no electricity. Broken glass. So in winter, she's essentially exposed to the elements. She lights fires inside to just keep warm, which then, destroys her lungs. She also, there seems to be no pity. I don't understand how on earth that's possible, but people would break in. She couldn't ring the police very easily for obvious reasons, because why on earth would she have any trust in the police?
That's right.
She does, I think, sometimes because she has to, but she kept on going. And I think Luke actually saved her life, because I believe he brought about murder in a small town in some way, I think. And people saw how she was living, and I think if they hadn't, she would have died long before. So he's had to wake up for many, many years wondering if his mum's still alive, because she was living in those conditions.
Terrible.
Yeah, I have so much admiration for Corin, and I think the last years of her life, I'm grateful that she was cared for in the last few years of her life. If she had passed away around about the time that Murder in a Small Town came out, it would have been more heartbreaking, I think. At least she had hope.
There was some kind of validation with that documentary, but like you say, she had hope. But there have been a lot of false dawns, haven't there? So, and that is, I mean, in yourself, and obviously, this is just your opinion. We don't know this medically. We can't fact check this, but in yourself, your own understanding, do you feel what has happened to Luke and then what happened to her hastened her death in any way?
I think that yes, if she would still be alive,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, her mum worked until she was in her 90s. She worked full time up until her 90s. Corin's mum did. No, she would still be alive. That's my belief. You can't prove it, but you can definitely see a kind of causal link.
Yes.
You live in poverty. What's that going to do to your health? The stress of it. All of this, you know. Of course, I think, yeah, that this killed her.
Yeah, it's going to have an impact, definitely. DJ Mark says, may she now rest in peace. And that's why it is important to continue the conversation, because this is her legacy. Her legacy is that she knew her son to be innocent because she was his witness to that. And I think it's interesting. I think reporting the cannabis to school, not my daughter doesn't smoke cannabis and never has, but I certainly wouldn't have been one to report it. But I think that actually is interesting, because if she reported to school, then she's hardly going to cover up a murder for her child, right? I think in that respect, you know. And let me read you some of these comments. This is such a wicked case, says Sass1. Praying for Luke and rest in peace, Corin. Catherine Hutton says, deepest sympathies to Luke and all who have lost the biggest advocate in the fight for justice. Rest in peace, Corin. Simon says he was a teenager and they stitched him up. Marie says, rest in peace, Corin. And Stephen points out the police are good at framing people. Remember Barry George, indeed, although I think he's been recently charged again about something else completely different. But Barry George, of course, in prison for 8 years, falsely accused of murdering Jill Dando. And it is very concerning to me, Jen, about the sheer volume of people I believe are inside because it was an easier case to make for the police. But I don't believe that Luke's was an easy case to make. That's the thing. That's what doesn't make any sense, right? So what can we do? We cleared there are supporters in our chat who would like to do something. What are you up to now in terms of Luke? Is there another appeal? Anything at all moving forward? Because as I say, this is surely Corinne's legacy if we all carry on her good work.
Well, I mean, there's a crowdfunder. Legal team have, we managed to get over the first hurdle, and that wasn't easy. I remember thinking, great, we funded the first part of this legal team that could at least write to the, I think it's the Crown Office, to say, don't destroy any more samples because they were due to be destroyed this year. And I had this terrible, terrible fear late last year that they would conveniently not get the letter. They would wait till like the 1st of January and go, right, because then they could legitimately do it. And so he wrote that letter was written at the end of the year, and they said, yes, we've got it. We won't destroy anything else. And then I think just a lot of admin, because this has been looked at so many times. And I don't think the new legal team inherited something that wasn't particularly organized, put it that way. But they have now done the work. So, I mean, we know that there are samples within that. For example, I mentioned that Jodie's hands were tied, and there's a sample there. But it's really it's very, very difficult because I think we only really get one shot at it. And I think there's this fear, because we have no trust in why should we have trust in the police? That no. We want the right people to do this. We want people we trust to do this. We don't want, to give it to the, I think we'd worry that there might be someone somewhere that would just conveniently destroy that sample. It sounds ridiculous.
Well,
sounds
no, it
absolutely
doesn't
ridiculous.
sound ridiculous because it's actually
Yeah.
based on proven
Yeah.
information that has happened before. Samples were destroyed. This is not you being ridiculous. This is you being realistic and trying to.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
preserve the evidence, for goodness sake. The other thing that I think is quite slightly problematic, and I don't know if it works the same in Scotland as it does in England, but there is an issue of people who deny their guilt, is that they are not paroled. Is it the same thing? Because it's a catch-22, isn't it? Because he's saying, I didn't do this. He said it right from the beginning. Does that then preclude him from getting parole in Scotland?
Well, they would say, oh no, but so they would say in practice, yes, it can do, because they're looking for somebody who's done rehabilitation courses.
Right.
You know, so yes, they would deny that, but the evidence would suggest that isn't, you know, what we're seeing with Luke is not the case. He was convicted without limited time. Now, I would have thought up until that point, and actually until quite recently, that you could not hold a child indefinitely, because, you know, he's 14, for God's sake. Don't you believe in rehabilitation? But in Scotland we can. You could hold a child indefinitely, and I don't think he's the only one, I've heard. So yes, because he will not admit to something he has not done, then the various programs are not being gone through. I mean, he's in shots with the most violent offenders in Scotland, and has been for a very long time.
Right.
But you know, his parole hearing went very well. I mean, he you know, you have a job within the prison. He you know, nothing has been raised of any concern. Unfortunately, I think I mentioned earlier that the press did turn up to his mother's funeral. Unfortunately, that information was leaked, and then because I think, as I say, the case is so ridiculous. I mean, what I have said, and everybody, I urge you to look it up, and don't just take my word for it, but look it up. You will find it's true. And that's why I think character assassination is so valuable to the media that were complicit. You know, they want to justify it because they know that they don't want to focus on what put him in jail. They want the character assassination. So anything they can get has great currency in Scotland, unfortunately. And the people who leaked that knew that. And imagine being the kind of person that would have that and wait for his mum's funeral to do that. And I think if Corn had worried about that, I think a lot of us would say, oh, no one would do that.
Right. Well, unfortunately, human beings can be unpredictable at best. Points out an issue that I often raise, because it does deeply concern me, and that is, if Luke Mitchell is innocent, and I think I said that at the start anyway, then it means that there are likely guilty people walking around, which is actually a danger to the public. So why the police aren't prepared to go at this? Well, we know why. We absolutely know why. I just want to make one more point, because a lot of people aren't aware of this, and that was actually when you go right back from to the beginning, when he was interviewed by police, he didn't have a representative, did he, at one stage? So, I mean, because that's the issue, isn't it? About was it the Cadder argument that
Peter Cadder? Thanks to Peter Cadder. I think only Peter Cadder, young people in Scotland who are being interviewed on a Section 20, oh God, I can't remember which one it is, but yes, said that you couldn't interview a child, interrogate a child without legal representation, which just seems obvious. And he had to take that to London. And I think the judges in London were astonished that people thought this was okay to deny legal representation, but they did. It's actually people who are victims of the justice system that seem to be the people that fix it. Exactly. It's not the people within it. It's not the people who are embroiled in that. They seem to accept it. So unfortunately, I don't think. I mean, Luke Mitchell's defence, a man called Donald Finlay, is very well known up here, and I think he wasn't the type to challenge the establishment. I think the person that would have saved Luke was somebody who knew that. Yeah, he was such an establishment figure, and I don't think he would. He was not going to protect Luke ahead of his
same old story. Monica says, poor lad. Ashley says, justice for Luke and Jodie, and I would actually now add also justice for Corinne as well, for everything that she's all been through and had to deal with. Before you leave us, Jen, any last words?
I mean, as I say, we keep thinking that something is going to change. There will be a great awakening, and we really do need help outside of Scotland. And this case is very, very well known in Scotland. It's very divisive, even though the case itself, which I outlined, is absolutely ridiculous. I think it makes fools of us all. So I'm very, very grateful to anyone outside of Scotland who looks at this and supports this and shares this. I think sometimes you need people outside the Scottish establishment to really will make that difference. In Scotland, we find that, Wings Over Scotland was what did for Peter Murrell. He's a Scot, but he's based in Bath, and he said that was a lot to do with it.
Right.
So we do need your help. So, but please share the crowdfunder, and please keep your eye on the updates from the crowdfunder, because that's where you will find them. And yes, I just thank you for having me on, having a chance to say this, because it really is very, very difficult. I never thought it would be this difficult to just, tell the truth, but the layers of complexity and confusion are sown, and it makes it so difficult to do what we're doing. And yes, also remember Corin. And
commiserations to all of you who were also involved with her and are also dealing with your grief over the loss of Corin as well. So,
Luke was very protective of his mom. I never got to meet her because he initially said yes, and then he was just so worried. She was so protective and loving of him, but he was also as protective and loving of his mom. And when he said she's too unwell, I respected that absolutely. So I saw nothing but a son who desperately worried for his mother. And yeah, so yeah, it is heartbreaking.
I just have to mention this because I think you already did, though. But Jacqueline said, "Are you going to mention Jodie's brother?" Did you not already mention that?
I didn't mention Jodie's brother. But I did say that we want to
focus on.
It makes it very difficult. I would love, put it this way, I would love to, but I think.
Is there a legal issue?
Distraction.
Right, but just because obviously now I've just opened that can, I just have to could you just briefly tell us what that issue is?
Well, when Murder in a Small Town came out, there were a number of suspects mentioned, and they said the number one suspect they couldn't mention. And that was then taken down because Joseph Jones' name appeared on the monitor.
Right.
So he wasn't mentioned during that documentary.
Right.
We do have to be very careful, as I say, because I think people want to solve this crime and then it makes it more complicated. And I often want to drill down and say, look, Luke's conviction is absurd. But there's a temptation because it's incredibly interesting. And yes. I know absolutely why she asked that question. I get it completely. But you can then spin off into a whole other world when you go down there.
Yeah, absolutely got you. What we need right now is justice for Jodie Jones, for Luke Mitchell and for Corin Mitchell. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Jen. Jen Gale from the Luke Mitchell campaign. They are doing sterling work. Please support them. All the links are already in the description, peeps. Thank you so much. Take good care of yourself, Jen.
Okay, bye.
Bye. What sterling work they are doing. Powerful stuff. Let me just take that off the screen. This image is so upsetting to see. Good stuff, Jen. Cheers, Jen, says Jacqueline. She did it, Jacqueline. I always like to try and, if my viewers come up with a comment that we haven't already tackled, I always like to try and tackle it if I see it. And I totally get her point. Sass says, thank you, Jen. Corinne is looking down with gratitude. Thank you, Jen, says Sarah Hibbert. Thanks, Jen, says Fokker Films, and all good stuff. Powerful stuff. Healing Guidance also says, thanks, Jen. Right, beautiful people. What did I miss out that I wanted to talk about earlier and didn't? Let me just double check this. I hate it when I miss out on things. I know what I want to talk about. Pet care reforms and this really weird visit from the police, right? Not for me, for once. So are you aware that there are pet care reforms that are currently taking place? And I sincerely hope that this is going to happen, because it's long been a real bugbear for pet owners of how extraordinarily expensive it is to take your pet to the vets. Extremely expensive. So the government made an announcement and the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, and it tackles the whole idea is to tackle these incredibly soaring vet bills that people cannot afford. And the idea is to cap vet prescriptions at £21. Which would be amazing, because honestly, every time I don't take my dog to the vet very often, and we are very fortunate. We have an independent vet. Most of them now are part of Chain. And the type of vet we have is when our dear cat had to be put down, which broke our heart, they then hand delivered notes and I think even flowers, amazing stuff. Anyway, we definitely need a cap of vets bills, and actually we need a cap of dentist bills as well, but that's a whole nother story. It's another racket, Fokker Films. It really is. And the idea is that it will be capped at £21, and then if you need additional supplies, it then is £12.50. That would be amazing. That would be amazing, Stephen. Yes, it really would. So that is currently going through, and that means that every veterinary practice will require an official operating license and regular inspections, because it will be regulated that they are not overcharging. And it's about time that this happened. This legislation needs to be modernized. It really is outrageous. And which actually brings me, and Fokker Film says, surely the main problem is 10K operation. I think what will happen, Fokker, I was talking to a friend of mine who understands this and has been to a degree involved with this. And actually the idea is to secure a cap, because the great part of the greatest resistance is actually to do with the pharmaceutical drugs. That's part of where it is. And the idea is to start with that and then move on to the extremely expensive surgery. We shall see. Any difference would be an improvement to what it is. Derek said, plus you pay VAT on vet bills. What a ripoff. Sarah pays £26 a month to the vet for wormer and flea tick stuff and injections. I know, it's no laughing matter. It's not a joke, isn't it? What's that? I know someone who caught a veterinarian pouring coal into another. Is that coal, Nikki? You're telling me there. That would be insane. Who has halal vets? I don't understand. They don't want pet owners. It brings too much joy. I love me. And I'm trying to stop saying that I'm a pet owner and I'm a guardian. That feels better. But I want to, it kind of links to this story. Very weird. And this is a story. Let me just put that up on the screen better. This MBR Acres is a story that I've covered repeatedly. It is in Cambridge, where they are breeding beagles on an industrial scale in order to supply them for testing. And I've been to MBR Acres and I've had people from MBR Acres on our show. And so this woman, Annika Svenska, she was visited at her home by police officers who offered a community resolution requiring her to complete an online thinking skills course and an online impact course over a social media post that she raised about MBR Acres, because they're horrible, they're murderers, I don't care, and the police better not show up at my door for saying that, because what that corporation does at MBR Acres is beyond evil. And she was absolutely right to make a big deal about it on social media. Anyway, the police showed up and they essentially wanted her to do this online thinking skill. And two police came to her door. This is all to do with the Online Safety Act. Pushed through, introduced by Nadine Dorris, who's now in reform, saying we don't really have the Online Safety Act, blah, 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 and there's something wrong with that and blah, blah, blah. And so what Annika did was she shared a reel. It was based on evidence that she believed to be genuine, and it was about hazardous waste that takes place around these poor dogs. It was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Thought police. Doris, my dog owns me, says Van Man. That sounds better. What do they say? What is it? I can't remember the expression. Anyway, I have done exactly, don't know what that means. Smash the labs. Have to be careful there. Of course, I'm not inciting that anybody does that, Mr. or Mrs. Policeman, but it's absolutely ridiculous. What a waste of police time. The horrors that are taking place out there where there is not enough police to cover it. And they go and rock up at this woman's house because she's calling out something that actually many people in society find absolutely abhorrent. I thought we sorted the animal cruelty stuff out in the 80s. Oh, if only. I wish. Anyway, more power to this lady's elbow. Absolutely ridiculous. This is one thing that somebody pointed out to me, because obviously I'm constantly, not constantly, but I'm critical a lot of the time about Free Speech Union, or Free Speech Zionism, as I call them. And somebody very kindly pointed this out to me on X, and thank you. I appreciate that. But just to note that This is about animals. It's politically safe for the Free Speech Union. When the Free Speech Union start representing people who are being doctors who are being suspended because they support Palestine, then I will sit up and take notice that the Free Speech Union is not a captured organization. But until that happens, no. But anyway, Annika, more power to your elbow, and thank you for being a supporter of animals, and particularly animals who are in this desperate state as a consequence of psychopaths. Base Driver says dogs are a great form of self-defense. Could be an ulterior motive here. There could indeed. There could indeed. Right. Where are we, people? Where are we moving on to? Big shout out. First of all, thank you for your response to King Cora Survivor, what Richard Kerr had to say on Friday's show. Very interesting to me that some of the people who shout the loudest about the whole idea of abuse and what is taking place, they won't support what Richard is saying because it goes against one of their heroes, Enoch Powell. Enoch Powell, Rivers of Blood, very divisive character. And some people, they simply cannot bring themselves to believe that their racist idol could also be a violent child abuser. Alas, the two often go hand in hand. And because both involve dehumanizing people in order to be able to abuse them. But anyway, I just want to say the brilliant Liliburne and Friends, I will make sure to put a link in the description to Liliburne and Friends on X, pointed out something very interesting to me about Enoch Powell. And Liliburne and Friends, I absolutely recommend you follow. Brilliant account. They keep receipts going back decades. Brilliant stuff. Anyway, Liliburne pointed out to me an article from the Daily Mirror on October the 31st, 1989. And it was a comment about how Enoch Powell had taken Jimmy Savile around the House of Parliament the day before being Jimmy Savile's birthday. And that was Halloween. That's a Halloween period. What a time for Jimmy Savile and Enoch Powell to be strolling around the Houses of Commons, giving Jimmy Savile, procurer of children for the British establishment, a tour, as if he needed a tour. Goodness knows what else they were doing. Enoch was probably introducing Savile to more of his Nazi mates to supply children to, possibly. Anyway, I checked that. Absolutely, the truth did happen. And also, Richard was also talking about the involvement of Harold Wilson. Harold Wilson was often considered in kind of like a godlike status, a Labour MP who was supposed to be there for the people. Pretty much like they're portraying Andy Burnham. And I managed to find an image of Jimmy Savile and Harold Wilson together, taken on the 7th of October, 1976 at Broadcasting House. But I think those things are always interesting, little bits of information that come through and start to make some sense, frankly. I don't know that, John. I don't know that Wilson was a nonce, but Richard was essentially saying that he was involved in the King Cora cover-up. Dads, our job on TV. Any more news on David Sullivan? No. But I have been noting a story, and I can't report on it today because I do not have the full details and I don't want to be sued. But let me just be clear here. And that is, I have become aware that David Sullivan and Ampika Pickston, his fiance, are targeting an individual on social media. And I believe I know who that individual is. That is somebody who has been speaking up long and loud for a long period of time about the exploits of Sullivan and Ampika Pickston. And let's be clear here. David Sullivan gave Ampika Pickston money to set up a care home that was then closed down due to safeguarding reasons. And I think the story that I was going to cover was to do with Ampika Pickston suddenly being made a personality of the year in some poll or other in answer to your question. So yes, so David Sullivan, Ampika Pickston, I am aware that you are highlighting somebody, you are targeting somebody. And what I thought extraordinary was when Ampika Pickston was acknowledging on the same night, she acknowledged that she got a personality of the year. Who gets a care home where there are safeguarding issues and it's closed down and then they become a personality of the year? But in the post that Ampika Pickston was highlighting that she had become this personality of the year, and I can't remember who it was for, she sent this kind of message to someone, and it would appear that it's the same individual. Now, this is somebody that I consider potentially vulnerable, and I've got my eye on you, both my eyes, eye on you, Sullivan and Pickston, right? But no further news at the moment regarding David Sullivan. And there should be, of course. But I just wanted to say that. And a wild Aussie woman is referring back to something Matt O'Connor said. I'm a single parent too, and my child has a disability. So yeah, rubs me the wrong way how Katie treats her. And you know, the thing is, we're always told, aren't we? Look, she is a great parent. Look how she is with Harvey. And I mean, clearly it would appear that there was a bad father involved there. But anyway, yes, Alien Big Cat. I think that is true, right? Isn't that true that both crays were nonces? Certainly one was, right? No worries, Kate. Happy to do it. Right. Very quickly, interesting how Trump and now Charlie Kirk's death has divided the American right. I've referred to this before. It's very interesting. So one of the things that Candace Owen, who's definitely the leading light in the kind of the opposition of who is responsible for the death of Charlie Kirk, and one of the things that she's alleged, and it's not confirmed, but one of the things she's alleged now, if this turns out to be true, this is huge. So what she is alleging is that the hospital that Charlie Kirk was taken to, allegedly the emergency room was completely cleared out 2 hours before the shooting took place. That's extraordinary. And apparently, again, allegedly, the files and the patients were purportedly moved via shuttles to another hospital. And now, if that turns out that that's correct, that the hospital that Charlie Kirk was taken to after he'd been shot, there had been some sort of message sent through 2 hours before he was shot to clear out the emergency room, then I think that's what's known as a smoking gun. And I have no idea whether that's true or not. Dad's our job TV, independent regulator. Well, that went past very, very quickly. Independent football regulator is also investigating Sullivan, as indeed they should. And Brady, because Brady, it turns out, knew about that he couldn't even mix with the girls' team, right? Anyway, he said he chose to. He said he had never had any dealings with them or whatsoever, but there were issues. But anyway, just to go back to that, if Candace Owens is right, then that is, I think, the smoking gun to end all smoking guns around the Charlie Kirk situation, because you have to wonder why they would clear out an emergency room 2 hours before a high-profile shooting would enter it. But it isn't verified, so I don't know. But all I'm saying is, if it's true, wow. Mind-blowing. So we shall see. We shall absolutely see. Big shout out to Madeleine Hunt at the Heritage Party. Madeleine has done some extraordinary, brilliant work into the local government reorganisation. It's a public sector restructuring process that's is taking place in England. And Madeleine has been on Wake Up to talk about it. And essentially, the idea is that it replaces this two-tier system of county and district councils with a single tier authority. Well, the problem is again, that's almost like a sort of a centralization of local issues, and that allows for all manner of corruption to take place. And you know, one of the things that Madeleine has talked about is the weaponization of devolution. And she says that it's creating this illusion of democracy, and it's designed to enforce top-down state mandates. As I say, she's done amazing work. She also has talked about the erosion of local voices, because Madeleine contends that LGRs consolidate multiple local authorities into single, larger unitary councils. Well, I think we can all see the problems from here. Anyway, she's done a series of substacks about it. Great work, in which she's also done templates that which you can also send to your council. I think I've already put Madeleine's Substack link in the description. She's doing solid work out there on behalf of all of us. And I think I said on Friday, this isn't sexy. This isn't the stuff that often people even find interesting, but it's the backbone. It's the backbone of keeping us as a democracy. And I know that the idea of us being a democracy with everything going on right now appears to be ridiculous, but she's doing stunning work. Monopod says Candace Owens is a total shill, big liar. And Stephen says more centralized control. Exactly that. So big up Madeleine Hunt. Great work. And link in the description if you are interested in looking more into what she's doing. And also using one of her templates. Good stuff. They're having a conversation now about Candace. Get to it, kids. Do your thing. I mean, anybody who's supported Andrew Tate with or without what's going on with him now is ludicrous to me. I didn't support Candice for a second supporting Andrew Tate or Harvey Weinstein or any of those. Some of the people that she seems to support seem a bit iffy and dodgy to me. And I'm not claiming to be a major Candice fan. What I am saying quite clearly is if what she's saying is true, then that is a smoking gun. As near as, damn it, a smoking gun. Shout out to Bev, who's been on with us before on Wake Up this Saturday and Sunday, a community wellness days where you can get soft tissue massages, hot stone therapy, cupping, pre-post surgery recovery, mobility and wellness. This is all taking place at the Cali Clock Tower Centre, London, N7 9HF. I will put an email address in the description where you can contact the organisers if you wish to know more. It runs from 12 to 4 p.m. on both days. Looks absolutely fantastic, frankly. Big up yourself, Bev. Sounds wonderful. And I noted, June, I noted your comment on Rumble this morning. Intended to be here early today, and you got there. Grand risings to all. I'm just looking into Mastodon, right, as an alternative social media platform. Seems a good one, open source, etc. Anybody know about it? 2 hours have gone, Stephen. Boom, like that. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to agree to disagree on Candice. We sure will. And do you know what? That's okay, isn't it? I think that the moment that people are going into like big, heavy fights and abuse and everything just because they disagree, it doesn't help us. I know some things, you know, we can get passionate about some things. I'm trying as much as I can to find some common ground with most people, as long as they're not part of the establishment, as long as they're not part of the kind of globalist structure, because I have no common ground with those people. My only aim is to bring it all down, bring down the structure. And so, but if I can find any common ground with people, I try and search for it. And it's hard sometimes, John. Yeah, I'm no angel. Sometimes I'm just like, F it, can't stand you, and that's that. And I'm going to show you. Sometimes I'm like that. I can be like that sometimes. Yes. Glowing. Right. Yes, and that's true. Lyra, I agree. Even controlled opposition shills have to speak truth most of the time. Yes, they do, because otherwise how would they reel you in? Nobody is perfect. And when Candice is wrong, she admits it, says Elaine. So I think we have a fair share of people who don't like Candice and people who do like Candice in the comments, which sounds like a good balance to me. First of all, just to say thank you, donators, as ever. Thank you to everybody in the super chat today. Thank you to Kath Hutton. Thank you to Nathan Bayliss. Thank you to Simon Milk. Thank you also to all the donators, Margaret Ruffley, to Norridon Sidham, to Alan Adams, to Wafer. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Clive DeCarl. Clive DeCarl is the only company that I currently am prepared to have any affiliation with. And we support Clive DeCarl's supplements around here, and there's a link in the description. If you buy any of Clive's branded supplements until 10th of August with the code Clive with Sonia 10, all the details are in the description down below, then you will receive 10% off branded products. And can I just say, over the last 2 weeks, you people are amazing. The sheer volume of supplements that you have been buying from Clive through Wake Up has just blown me away. And every penny received goes back into making Wake Up better. And don't forget, I'm saving for our own, essentially our own platform that we will run through a streaming service, but essentially our own platform. So we don't have to face half the issues that we have to face when we use other people's platforms. So that's what I'm currently saving for. And thank you to everybody who has brought Clive's branded supplements, and they really are truly ace. And I wouldn't say that unless I genuinely believed it. Right. We are now heading for home, people. I'm now at the end. Wake Up's wind down. And Wake Up's wind down today is inspired by comedian Cat Williams, who I think is really funny. And he's another American who is prepared to say it as he sees it. And I do find him highly amusing a lot of the time. And I caught this, I don't know, TikTok or whatever over the weekend, and it really resonated with me. And I know it's taken from an old quote, but the way that he articulated it was so brilliant. He said, if you can list all the worst things that have happened to you and you got past them, that's what you have in common with all the superheroes. And I was like, whoa, wait, what? And I just thought about that. And all 100% of the most awful things that have happened to you, you've survived them. And it's a completely different way to look at life, isn't it? I thought about it. It resonated with me. That which didn't break me has reinforced me. That which sought to diminish me has helped me build. That which didn't define me has refined me. All of those good things, all that good stuff. And I just wanted to kind of comment on that at the end of today's show. We are often caught in a world of victim mentality where everyone, not everyone, but where lots of people feel that the world hates them, is against them. And not to say that there aren't some legitimate victims, right? But I think I've quoted him before. Who is it? What was that famous comedian who was hit by Will Smith? Forgotten his name, but very famous quote. And that was, he said, there are victims in this world, but the emergency room is full of people with paper cuts. And I really agree with that sentiment, because we've become this world of where everybody feels that they need to be compensated for everything. Don't get me wrong. There are genuine cases where people need to be compensated, and usually institutional abuse is one of them, right? Failures in medicine, that's another. But we are still caught in this kind of victim mentality where people don't always necessarily look at the bad things that happen to them and say, I really learned from that. And I think that's a really important lesson to learn. And because also what we have learned with this kind of victim mentality world, and victim mentality extends in stupid places. Men who want to access women's spaces are suddenly become victims. You're not a victim. Highly likely you may well be a predator though, right? So some people use that whole idea of being a victim to manipulate others and try and score points in scenarios. And I'm old enough and I'm mature enough to know the difference between a genuine victim and someone who is weaponizing victimhood. And while I almost always feel compassion for those who have been genuinely victimized, I also know that it is always to the advantage of the person if they are able also to rise against the odds. And going back to my original point, whatever you're feeling today when you are listening to this, you've survived whatever it is. The very worst things that have happened to you have already happened to you, and you still survived it. That makes you amazing. And if you're having a bad day or something really awful is happening to you right now, and let me be very clear, I am not underestimating the importance of terrible, terrible things that happen to people, losing loved ones, losing a limb, anything like that, miscarriages of justice. But you still survived it. You are still here and you are listening to me. You're listening to me say this. That tells me you are your own superhero. We shall effing win. Who still wants out? No, Randy, you can't go out. And that is the argument against euthanasia, says Stolly Files. Did I just create? Oh, blimey, got you. Anyway, gave it my best shot this morning because I think some people, no choice. That's right. We've got to get on with it. Thank you now then, TV, because you know what? I believe in you. I believe in you. If you've, whatever it is you're going through, if you've still got enough in you to rock up here, whether live or on playback, because you're still tuned in enough, you're all right, you're doing okay. And whatever you're dealing with today, I want you to know that I send you so much love, so much healing, so much care. It's going to be all right. You've got this. So I don't know who needs to hear this today, but your very presence here against so much opposition, even being born is opposition. If you haven't been aborted, or there hasn't, you haven't, your mother hasn't drunk herself silly during pregnancy or whatever, even being born is a miracle. So you yourself have risen against much opposition. Well done, you. You are indeed powerful. You survived too many storms to give up now. And I heard a lovely expression. I'm going to paraphrase it badly because that's what I do. And that is, you've survived too many storms to be worried about a few raindrops. My attitude is grab your umbrella and let's go. Let's go. Bye. I'm going to finish on a quote. Somebody else's quote, Jennifer Weiner, who said, sometimes the worst thing that happens to you, the thing you think you can't survive, it's the thing that makes you better than you used to be. And I know that there is truth in that, absolutely, unquestionably. Some of the trials that I have endured, and some of them have been extremely painful, they have improved me and made me a better person all ways round. And so there you go. We must indeed stand together against these psychopaths. Temple of Monday morning. Here we are. There is truth in that. Right, peeps? I am out here. Thank you, Jeannie. Lots of love to you all. This, of course, is all the names of my Patreons and people who regularly contribute to Wake Up. All contributions matter. Not everybody can manage a financial contribution, but if you can, I obviously greatly appreciate, but all contributions matter. Telling people about Wake Up, sharing Wake Up, joining Wake Up, watching Wake Up, like, sharing and subscribing. Blessings to you all. Lots of love to you all. I will see you, of course, on Friday. Have a fantastic week, you beautiful, beautiful people. Take good care of yourself.